Okay, good evening. I'm going to call the July 16th, 2025 meeting of the Auburn School Committee to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you and welcome. I'll start down here on my right with introductions.
Dan Poisson, Ward 5.
Corin McWiggin, Ward 1. Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Pamela Albert at large.
Sue Doris, Superintendent.
Pat Gaudier, Ward 3.
Adam Platt, City Council Representative.
Scott Anier, Assistant Superintendent.
And Quinn and Jay were unable to be here tonight. So starting with our consent agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, which includes the approval of tonight's agenda, the approval of the minutes of the June 18th, 2025 meeting, as well as the certified contracts of Ann Pontebrand, Faith Fontaine, Catherine Walls, Jordan Ledwith, and Rosemary Tuhig. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Corin, second Pat. All those in favor? Motion carries. We do not have anyone here tonight for public participation, so we're going to move right into our presentation on the facilities update.
Mr. Neer is going to provide us with an update tonight on the facilities and maintenance work happening this summer.
Yes, good evening. Things are rocking all over the district. So summer work taking place throughout the district, lots of cleaning, repairing, painting. I've met with maintenance staff about some priorities, and the swing set and pit, I don't really know the name of it, for Walton and Sherwood are scheduled to take place this week. So if you drive by one of those, particularly Walton, you can see where the area has been prepped for a new swing set for out there. Big news, last Wednesday, the 9th, the state priority construction list was released. So you recall that last early in the winter, we brought the construction team around to all of the elementary schools in AMS, and they did their evaluation. They evaluated 96 schools, and so the list was released last week. East Auburn came in at 21, Walton 31, Washburn 57, Fairview 74, Sherwood 77, and AMS 79, and Park Ave was 94 out of 96 schools. So that just an update on where we stood with that. And so those schools that are closer up the list, we'll start working with the DOE in terms of their plans. But just to kind of give you where the state evaluated those schools. We've met with Harriman to establish a timeline for the advisory committee for AMS. The members have been selected, and the first meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 23rd at AMS, 5 o'clock in the library. Members have been contacted. The meeting schedule moving forward has been established with Harriman. Harriman will be working with Ben Wilson at AMS to do meetings, and they'll also be doing meetings with the AMS staff at the start of the school year, right around the August workshop days and the first couple weeks of September. They have 2 of those scheduled with them. As well as we have programmed in updates to the facilities subcommittee, the school committee, as well as city council are all factored into the schedule. And there will be 2 community meetings scheduled for September and October once the advisory committee meets, and we can work with Mr. Wilson to establish what those are. Then we'll be able to publicize and get those out. But there's 2 of them that will be set up, September and October. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. We have a bunch of dates that are scheduled. The advisory meeting dates are the 23rd, August 13th, September 17th, October 22nd, November 19th, December 17th, and then into the new year, January 14th and February 11th. Updates back to the facility subcommittee meetings that will be scheduled on 9/9, 11/11, and 1/13. And then we'll be back to update this group, the school committee, on the 17th of September, the 19th of November, and then concept review of design on December 17th. So those things will be updated onto the website, but just to kind of give you a snapshot of what's happening there. So as I said, not dull in the district. We did a bus ride tour. I did a bus ride tour with the Public Works Director and our Transportation Director to examine railroad crossings and sight lines. And why does that matter? Because there are new railroad regulations that allow for faster speeds, and we needed to examine the crossings for visibility as a bus comes up and approaches. So Public Works has been communicating with Transportation, the Auburn Transportation, Jonathan Labonte, to try to get an understanding of when the crossings would come down and what our visibility lines would look like and timing for that, because those speeds are more noticeably increased now with some regulation changes. We've been in the discussions to explore developing a greenhouse to be on site at Edward Little. This is a venture involving our our food service department. So Chris Piercy, with some of his work, he and Lily, we've been having some conversations and tag teaming back in with some of the teachers and curriculum at the high school. So those things are in the works, but that's been what's been happening in terms of conversations. And finally, crosswalk striping has begun. So if you look out through the city of Auburn, their striping process has begun, and they made a very concerted effort to work with us and try to be sure that the crosswalks were done first and not in the last weeks of August, so that everything was done correctly and uniformly in preparation for school opening. So they've been doing that and have targeted that work, and we really appreciate their collaboration and emphasis to do the crosswalks, particularly around the school area, and then work their way out away from the school area. So that's kind of what I have for an update of what's been going on since school ended.
All right, any questions for Scott?
I just have a quick one, mostly putting myself out there. I used to run a nursery, so if they need any help with the greenhouse, I'm here.
And that's one of what we're trying to do differently this time around with the greenhouse, and Lily's already spoken to that, is really to bring in community partners with it in terms of managing it, supervising it, and really tapping into a lot of community expertise.
Great. Any questions for Scott?
Scott, I just had one question. Is the striping an annual, does that happen annually, crosswalk striping?
Yes, it is, and a lot of it is dependent on their workforce and what they have available, and other work that's happening in the city. But it is an annual thing. They just made the concerted effort to work with us to try to do that sooner. But yes, it is.
I saw it happening this morning in front of Washburn. I have one question about the state, I guess the CIP, capital improvement projects. Is there any indication as to where you fall on the list for projects and what number of projects are most likely to get funded?
So through the documentation, that list didn't provide anything. I got some follow-up information yesterday. Harriman had kind of given us the heads up that this was coming. We're going to schedule a meeting with them. The DOE also has some workshops to try to give you some more insights into what those numbers are. There wasn't anything in any of the documents that I received that said the first 5, the first 10, anything like that. It's just been historical knowledge of how many they do. And what we do know is that the legislature took up some information and some bills this past year, knowing that there is a great demand within the state to really re-examine the whole overall funding model and what that would look like. Nothing has moved forward yet, but to come back to your question, we just know historically you're probably not going to get very far down on the list just because the money doesn't go very far. Recently in the news, the Wyndham Middle School will now be the most expensive school in the state, so we're off that list. That's kind of cool. But the costs for new construction are across every kind of new construction are just really quite high. So I'm not foreseeing that list is going to go too far down.
Okay, thanks.
When do they create a new list?
So for a while it had been frozen, like it hadn't moved for many, many years, and then they did it about 3 years ago. So we're anticipating that it's going to be the 2-year cycle that we've seen before, but some of that really is dependent on some of those bills that went through, that were brought up at the legislature to really examine the funding model. So that probably plays a bigger role in the next time they're going to re-examine. So historically it had been 2 years. It had been on hold for a little bit. And they've been kind of moving back into that 2-year cycle, but I really think the funding process will dictate that more than anything.
Any other questions for Scott? Okay. Moving on, we do not have a school committee student representatives report tonight, so moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Doris.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Albert. Tonight, I have one item on my report. I wanted to give you an update on the ESEA grant funding delay. So you may have heard about the freeze in federal funding. The U.S. Department of Education did not release the full FY26 grant funding on July 1st as we would expect, and that has been customary in the past. Allocations for all of the states are currently under review by the Federal Office of Management and Budget. This delay will affect our Title II, III, and IV programs. And I did provide you with a memo tonight so you can see about what we have there for allocations. For Title II, we typically receive around $250,000, and this money supports professional development, literacy and math instructional support, class size reduction positions, and also the Auburn Induction Academy program. The Title III funding, we usually receive around $30,000. This provides support for our multilingual learners in terms of instructional materials and supplies and family engagement activities and also teacher professional development. And then with Title IV, we receive around $100,000, and these funds go for AP exams at the high school, and we also use this money to transfer into Title I to support our elementary school-wide Title I programs. So in terms of what happens now that this funding is on pause, we took a look at our carryover funds with the title grants, and we're in pretty good shape. So we'll use the existing carryover funds to begin the school year, and this is going to allow us to move forward with any positions that we have. And then the new class size reduction positions planned under Title II will be funded through Title I to ensure coverage at the start of the school year. And then for the math instructional coach position, we're going to hold off on that right now because that was really tied to the Title II funds, and it was an additional new position. So we're going to not advertise for that until we know what we're going to be receiving and when. And then Title III programming will not be impacted at all because we have an adequate carryover amount to support all of the planned services for this year. I also want to clarify that this does not impact our Title I funds. These are the funds that are supporting the school-wide programs, and we use those funds to pay for our literacy interventionists. And these funds also pay for the McKinney-Vento program for homeless youth. And these funding freezes also are not impacting our special education funding, so we're all set there as well. So we're going to continue to monitor this situation, and I will keep you updated as more information becomes available. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a couple questions. First, is there any indication of when the Office of Management and the Federal Office of Management and Budget is planning on releasing the FY26 grant funding?
We are hearing that we'll receive an update in late September, early October. So it could be at that time, or that might be the time period where we receive more information.
Also, so luckily we are able to fund that loss right now, or that delay. Is this something that we can sustain?
I think we're going to have to look carefully at our positions and what we're funding through these grants for next year.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Doris? Okay. So moving on, my chairperson's report. So I just wanted to give you all an update on our school board self-evaluation process. So that is something that we identified as one of our goals during our goal-setting workshop last year. And in preparing for it, Dr. Doris realized that we have not yet officially adopted the policy, which is BBAB, which is the policy around self-evaluation for the school committee, as well as the self-evaluation tool itself. And so those will be added to the next agenda of the policy subcommittee for review. And then once they have reviewed it and moved it forward, it will then be put on our full meeting agenda for us to review and adopt. And so once we've done all of that, then we will move forward with the process itself, where we will each complete an evaluation, and then we will meet in a public workshop to discuss and review the results of that evaluation. So I just wanted to give you all an update on that, because I had mentioned it the last time we met, that it was something that we would be doing, but not until we actually officially adopt the policy for it. So more to come on that. Any questions about that? Okay. City council update, Adam.
Thank you. Just a pretty thin update today. Let's see. Number one, last Monday, positions that are up for re-election in November, those papers became available with the clerk. So for any city councilor or school board member looking to either run for the position or run for re-election, you can now go down and see Emily in the clerk's office to get your papers, so that's important. And then secondly, I had mentioned at a previous meeting that the city council had passed a first reading of the creation of a permanent homelessness committee. That is in contrast to the ad hoc committee that existed previously. It passed on a second reading at the last city council meeting, so applications for that committee are open. There's a description of that committee on the City of Auburn's website. It's a 15-member committee. Many of those folks are representatives of certain organizations. I did want to point out that the school department is it our McKinney-Vento rep?
Yes.
Who will be sitting on that committee as well. So that'll be our kind of point of contact to understand what's going on in that committee. So just wanted to share that, and if anyone has any questions, let me know.
So by saying that about the schools, the McKinney-Vento, so that the students that are not homeless,
Experiencing
unhoused,
homelessness,
thank
yes,
you.
unhoused.
The unhoused students are, so this is also considered part of that whole project as well, not just the community, but also students.
I think it's the community, which includes everyone. I think it's not just about housing. It's not just about homeless people over the age of 30. You know, I think it's all encompassing, trying to understand all the different facets of the predicament we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm glad that Sasha's going to be involved too.
Mm-hmm.
I believe she's been on it, hasn't she, the one before?
Yeah, I think she was on the ad hoc committee, and I think I haven't looked at the exact list there will be some carryover, I believe, from the ad hoc committee to the permanent committee. I believe the permanent, I'd have to double check if we've expanded the size of the committee now that it's permanent. I don't know if the ad hoc was 15 or not. I'd have to check.
Great. Thanks, Adam. We do not have any reports from any of our standing committees or our subcommittees tonight, nor do we have any old business or any new business tonight. All of the upcoming meetings are listed. So our next regular school committee meeting is August 6th. We go back to our regular first and third Wednesdays, starting again in August. Do I have any future agenda items or requests for information? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Corin, second, Pam. All those in favor? We are adjourned at 6:20. Thank you.